All right, everybody. I think I changed my mind. I'm just going to go ahead and start from the top, and I'm going to need to take a look at some things and set this up so you get to see what I'm doing. So the first thing is, I guess, adding an alias to a device. There's a lot of times that we have a request and had in the past that customers want to take an IP device that's already assigned on the network. It already has DNS information, and they want to add an alias record to it. And that's pretty simple to do. So what we would do in IPControl is we go out and we would get the IP address from the database using the GET APIs. We would pull it back and modify it, keeping the ID of the record, and we would edit the array that holds the alias record and import that in the modify. All right, so the first thing I need to do is I need to go in and find a suitable IP address. And I had been using one that I'm going to go back to and see if I can recreate it. And that's just going to be in my 8 subnet. And let's grab one that I know we can use and test and delete and not concern myself with. So 8.3 was the one I was using, and let's go ahead and do this here. So we'll go ahead and create this as a static IP just quickly so you can see it. We'll keep it in my automate my IP domain, which is mine. And we're going to go ahead and keep its DNS records and save it. And let's make its host name test API alias. Okay, we're going to go ahead and submit that. So what I want to do then is I want to add an alias, and let's call this byte, and let's get the IP address 192.168.8.3. I'm going to log into my executive and use my user. Okay. So what this then should do is go out and get that object, which it did. It then modified the array, which is what an alias is, and I could do this as a string sequence. So I could do a comma here to represent multiple strings, and each one would get inserted into the array. And then what we should see, and that is real time, so these things do happen in real time, is when you look at that IP address, we'll then see its resource record stored there at the data. So that's a real simple way of doing that, and we can do that again if I wanted to. I could just keep doing uh, byte 2, byte 3, and I think, let's try this. No, can't do it. So I've only got it set up right now that you can only do one array and add it that way. But I think if you run that again, it might add it, and it just adds it in addition. Okay, so that's what we do. So I didn't add this with the multiples. This is what the error looks like, by the way, if you try that. But if you run it in multiple sequence, it'll just continue to append. This one doesn't edit. So that's good to know there. And then again, you'll see those when you refresh a record and take a look again, just to show you the real time that that's happening. Now, for those of you who may or may not be familiar with IPControl, this is a BT, British Telecom. They acquired a product called Diamond IP that I work with. And we've been working this company about 15 years now, and had the second company of IP address management that we'd worked with since the early 90s. So very familiar with this stuff. But here's our record, and what we would do with this too in IPControl is we would then create the audit records showing you the date, time, and who changed it in terms of the user, and that it was API. All right, so that's one function there. The next on the list is going to be the containers and the add for those. Now, one of the functions that we have within the container maintenance is the ability to select a container and effectively clone it, which is what I did with the IP. I get the container detail, pull it back into the script, modify it, and then import it again, which does a modify. So I'm going to do the same thing here, and I'm going to tell it which one I want to name. And this is kind of out of sequence the way I would look at this. And let's try it actually from the command line here. Let's do add IPC container to clone, IP executive, my user, inc admin, and I'm going to go ahead and specify the container to clone. And let's just do my VO office I use for demos. And the new parent, which I can tell it if I want, and this is optional, I can tell it to either create it in the same container parent that it's in now when I clone it, or I can tell it to reclone it and put it out to another container, which I could say reparent this now into another location and store it there. Right? So I'm going to keep it in the same container so that we can see it, work with it there. And then if I need to specify container to disambiguate where this information is located, or because there might be duplicate names, I can say some other details of where it's located. But here I want to then specify the container name. So let's do container and let's call ATL VO 0930 or 29 to keep with our syntax here. Okay. Now, a couple things I'm doing just for reference. I have a debug mode, which I'm then taking all of the output. This won't be enabled, but shows you what we got effectively. Here's the JSON structure back from the database, showing what's currently there. We then take that and I modify it, adding in the details and then importing it again. And then I get that result back in the list. And then if I refresh that, I will see then the container clones down here in the bottom. All right, so that's real simple to do there as well. Now, the other site that we have here is adding what we call sites. And a site to us is made up of a number of different templates, if you will, that allow you to automate a number of IP address assignments for blocks in a single transaction. And so you'll have a site allocation template if you're an admin, and I do. And so what I have are two templates. I have a region template, which is going to effectively create aggregation blocks. And I expect those aggregation blocks to be placed in certain containers at certain levels of my container aspect. That's how I architected mine. And then I have what we'll call branch offices, which are small. And a small office consists of 3 subnets, a data, subnet, management, and voice over IP. And within each of those, you then have various allocation policies, which then dictate that address 1 is going to be a static IP address, and it's the gateway. And then we're going to have reserved addresses, then dynamic ranges that are 50, starting at 50 to the 5th address on the end. So if the subnet size changes, this will auto-calculate based on that parameter. And then I can set up other policies like the DNS servers, things that those clients may use further down the road with their, say, DHCP. Okay, so that's what I want to actually affect and I want to build. And I want to apply this template to create those subnets since I'm going to create a new site and I'm going to basically duplicate one and tell it what to do. So we're going to use the same container cloning concept using an existing site template or site that I want to mimic and use in this process. All right, so here we go, and this is what we're going to do. So the first is that I want, say, to duplicate this template here. All right, so let's go ahead and first we're going to give this AZ00011111 just to say what it is. And the container to clone is AZ-0001, which in my examples are always templates. This is what pretty much predicates within that level of container what user-defined fields I want to use, what naming conventions, things like that. Okay. So here's our executive, which will run, and the site template name is where we need to have that template, which I need to look at again to make sure I enter this right. And this is a branch, office, SM for small, and then INC admin. And if I want to reparent this elsewhere, I could, or I can just tell it to create it in the same parent. Okay, so what I'm expecting this to do is go out and clone that container and create another container in the site with the subnets. And let's run it and see what happens. Hopefully this will work and I don't have to modify anything on the fly. So in this example then, what is best to describe is you're deploying a new location. And this new location, whether it's like a DXC data center or user facility, has these subnets, and it may be a branch or an office or bank. And what we're going to do then is create the container, specifying all of its policies, and then go out and allocate the subnets. And what we expect to be done when this is complete is a full site deployment, which we then see here in our container, has a name and then its subnets. And then we can see the quick details about the DHCP scopes and pools. And then we can have the system automatically deploy that DHCP space to its server for usage. So really a cool concept, something I've used a lot over the years, and that we're introducing more and more cloning capabilities within IPControl to do this. So expect to see those coming soon, and this is how I've done mine. So that's long enough, I think, for these 3 APIs, just some of the helper functions. And we're going to come back in here shortly and we'll do some of the export functionality and then get into those capabilities and filters. All right, so hang on for the next video and see you soon.